Whispering Pages presents The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. Chapter 21. Someone Else in the Garden. Deacon pushed Colin around the garden. Colin wanted to hear about every tree, flower, and blade of grass. Sometimes he laughed at Deacon's stories, and Mary had to remind him to speak softly. They finally stopped under the apple tree. Colin noticed something new. "That old tree over there," he inquired, "is it quite dead?" "I," Deacon said, "but the roses have climbed over it. When the flowers bloom, it will be the prettiest in the garden." "It looks like a big branch has broken off," Colin remarked. "I wonder how that happened." Mary felt uneasy because she didn't want her cousin to know about his mother's accident. She was relieved when the robin distracted Colin by darting over to its nest with a fat worm in its beak. Colin chuckled softly. "He's taking an afternoon snack to his mate. I could use some tea and biscuits myself." Maybe the garden was magical, Mary thought. Colin seemed like a completely different boy. His face glowed and he laughed. It was as though nothing could make him angry or afraid. "I don't want this afternoon to end," Colin said, "but I will come back tomorrow and the day after and every day after that. I will see spring and summer here. I will watch everything grow. I will grow hair myself." Deacon said, "We will have you walking and digging before long." Colin's face flushed. "You think so?" Deacon answered cautiously, "Well, you have got legs, same as other flocks." Mary was nervous until Colin said, "There's nothing really wrong with them, except they are very weak and thin. I'm afraid to stand because they shake so much." "You will stop being afraid after a while," Deacon smiled. They were all quiet for some time. They wanted to enjoy every last minute of the afternoon, but their silence was broken when Colin said in an alarmed whisper, "Who's that man?" while pointing to the high wall. Mary and Deacon instantly turned around. It was Ben Weatherstaff on a ladder peering down at them. He shook his fist at Mary. "I should have known it was you. You are a bad one, always poking your nose where it doesn't belong." Mary called back, "It was the robin who showed me the way." This made old Ben madder. "Don't you be blaming the robin," he bellowed. Then his curiosity got the best of him, and he asked, "How did you get in?" Before Mary could reply, Ben saw something coming across the grass. It was Colin in his wheelchair. Ben's jaw dropped in astonishment. "Do you know who I am?" Colin demanded. Ben was so shocked he could hardly speak. He hadn't seen Colin since he was a baby and had only heard the stories people told. At last, Ben said without thinking, I know you. You have your mother's eyes. You are the poor crippled lad." Colin's face turned betrayed. He sat up and yelled, "I'm not a cripple." "You don't have crooked legs?" Ben asked in a hoarse voice. This was too much for Colin. His anger and pride made him forget everything else. He threw the blanket off his legs and called to Deacon for help. Colin grabbed Deacon's arm, stuck out his thin legs on the grass, and stood up, tall and straight as an arrow. "Look at me," he shouted. What Ben did next was even more surprising to Mary. The old man choked and gulped, and tears ran down his wrinkled cheeks. Ben gasped out, "You are as thin and white as a ghost, but there's not a bump on you. Bless you, boy. You'll be a man yet." Colin stayed standing. In his Raza voice, he said, "When my father's away, you have to obey me. This is my garden. Get down from that ladder. Miss Mary will show you inside. Now that you have seen us, you'll have to keep our secret." Wayne could hardly take his eyes off the boy. Then he touched his hat politely and said, "Yes, sir." Mary ran out of the garden. Colin turned to Deacon, who was beaming. "I told you that you could stand up when you stopped being afraid," he grinned. Colin held his head high. Then he remembered what Mary had said about Deacon. "Are you doing magic?" he asked. "No, you are doing the magic," Deacon replied. "The same magic that makes plants grow and trees blossom." "I want to walk to that tree," Colin said, "so I will be standing there when he comes in." And he did it. Deacon held his arm, but Colin was wonderfully steady. He was standing beside the tree when Mary and Ben entered it. Mary was amazed. Under her breath, she repeated, "You can do it." Colin addressed Ben. "Look at me. Am I a hunchback? Have I got crooked legs?" "Not you, sir," Ben said in almost his usual way. "But why have you been hiding? Letting flocks think you are crippled and horse or elf-witted." "Who said that?" Colin demanded angrily. "Lots of flocks tell lots of lies," Ben said. "Everyone said I was going to die," Colin said fiercely, "but I am not." Ben looked him up and down. "No, so," he said gently. "You have got too much pluck. I saw that when you planted your feet in the ground. Now sit yourself down a bit, sir." Colin did sit. In a softer tone, he asked what work Ben did in the gardens. "Anything I'm told," the old man said. "I'm kept on here because your mother, she liked me." There was a soft look in his eyes. This was her garden. After she was gone, I would come here in secret and climb over that wall. But the last 2 years, I haven't been able to because of my stiff knees. "So you did the cutting and pruning?" Deacon exclaimed. Ben continued, "Mrs. Craven was so fond of this place. Once she made me promise that if she was ever ill or away, I would tend to her roses. When she died, everybody was ordered to stay out, but I kept my promise." "I'm glad you did," Colin said kindly, "and I know you can keep our secret." I will," Ben said, "and I will be glad to come in by the door again." Colin reached for Mary's trowel. His hand was weak, but he stuck the trowel in the ground and turned over some dirt. He looked up at Deacon and said, "You told me I could walk and dig, and here I'm doing it." Ben laughed hoarsely. "You are a Yorkshire lad for sure," he said. "How would you like to plant something? I can get a rose in a pot." Colin gladly agreed, and Ben hurried away. Forgetting about his aches and pains, with Deacon's help, Colin dug until the hole was deep enough. Ben soon returned from the greenhouse. He hobbled as fast as he could and presented the potted rose to Colin. Colin set the plant in the hole and held it while Ben filled in the soil from leaf. "I planted it," Colin proclaimed with satisfaction. "Help me up, Deacon. I want to be standing when the sun sets. That's part of the magic." When the sun went down on this strange and wonderful day, Colin was standing straight up on his own 2 feet and laughing. Chapter 22. The Magic. Everything that happened in the garden seemed magical. The plants grew, the seeds took root, and the children changed for the better. Ben would talk to them about gardening and about Colin's mother. She loved plants that could almost touch the sky. She said the blue sky always looked so joyful, he said. One day, Colin told Mary, Deacon, and Ben to stand in a row. "I'm going to try a scientific experiment," he announced grandly. "I'm going to discover all about magic, just like scientists study electricity. Mary knows about it because she's from India, where they believe in magic. Deacon is an animal charmer. I learned to stand up here, so each day I'm going to say, 'Magic is in me. Magic is making me well. Magic is making me as strong as Deacon.' Will you help me by saying the words?" "What should we do?" Mary asked. It seemed rather mysterious. Colin had them sit in a circle. He began to chant. Over and over he said, "Being alive is the magic. Being strong is the magic. The magic is in me. It's in all of us." After some time, Colin announced, "Now I'm going to walk around the garden." He led the way. Deacon walked on one side and Mary on the other, followed by Ben, the squirrels, the fox, and the lamb. Every few yards they stopped to let Colin rest. Colin held on to Deacon's arm but managed a few steps alone. He kept repeating his chant until he had circled the whole garden. "I did it," he cried. "The magic worked. My first scientific discovery." "Dr. Craven must not know," Colin warned. "No one can know until I can walk and run like other boys. I will keep coming here and back in my wheelchair, but when my father returns to Misselthwaite, I will walk into his study and say, 'Here I am, like any other boy. I'm well and I will live to be a man.'" "He won't believe his eyes," Mary said happily. "After my experiment is over," Colin told them, "I'm going to become an athlete." Ben almost jumped up with excitement. "We will teach you to box. You can be the champion prize fighter of England," he declared. Colin was quick to correct him. "I shall not be a prize fighter. I shall be a scientific discoverer." Ben humbly pulled his cap down and said, "I beg pardon, sir." But under his cap, Ben's eyes twinkled with delight. He knew the boy was gaining in strength and spirit. Chapter 23. Susan Sowerby Saves the Day. The children had agreed that Mrs. Sowerby could share their secret. Deacon told his mother how Colin and Mary were getting plumper and rosier every day. But there was a problem. The servants at the manor couldn't find out that Colin was regaining his health. He and Miss Mary have to do some play acting, Deacon said with a grin. Mr. Colin complains as usual and acts helpless, and Miss Mary treats him like he is a weak, pitiful thing. When they get to the garden, they burst out laughing. Mrs. Sowerby nodded. Good healthy's laughter's better than pills any day. Deacon said, they are both so hungry now that they keep asking for more food. But if they ask for too much, the servants and the doctor get curious. The doctor said that he would write to Mr. Craven about it, which scared Colin. Colin wants to surprise Mr. Craven when he comes back. Maybe I can help, Mrs. Sowerby said. She offered some fresh milk, extra bread, and currant buns for Deacon to take to the garden. The next morning, Deacon surprised his friends with 2 tin pails, one filled with rich creamy milk and the other containing fresh buns wrapped in a Jager's napkin. The children were grateful for the delicious food and ate hungrily. Colin remarked, Mrs. Sowerby must have the magic in her too that makes her think of ways to do nice things. Now, staying inside on rainy days made Colin bored and restless. One dreary day, Mary invited Colin to explore the mysterious old house with its 100 rooms that nobody went to. 100, Colin said dreamily. That's as mysterious as a locked garden. They both laughed. They played in the room with the little ivory elephants and explored rooms Mary hadn't seen. New hallways, staircases, pictures, and strange old things. Back in Colin's room, they ate every bite of lunch. Mary also noticed something odd in his room. The curtain no longer covered the picture of his mother above the fireplace. Colin noticed and said, I like to see her now. One night I woke up and saw moonlight shining on the curtain. It was like magic filled the room. I opened the curtain and it was as though she was laughing because she was glad to see me standing up. Mary looked at the picture and said, You look so much like her now, like her ghost made into a boy. If I look like her, then maybe my father will be fond of me, he said hopefully. Chapter 24 Homecoming. While the secret garden was coming alive, a lonely man with crooked shoulders was visiting beautiful sights in Europe, but nothing made an impression on his gloomy heart. After months of travel, Mr. Craven was staying at an inn near a mountain stream in Austria. One day he walked out by himself. Sitting beside the stream, he watched the birds fly down to drink. Clusters of blue forget-me-nots were growing beside the softly rushing water. For the first time in 10 years, he felt himself relax and notice how lovely everything was. Slowly, new and beautiful thoughts began to push out his old sad ones. He began to come back to life. That autumn, he traveled to Italy. One warm night, he was sitting beside the lake near his hotel. The full moon was reflected in the river. Everything was so calm that he fell asleep. He dreamed that he was in a place filled with roses. A distant voice called out his name. It was his wife's. In the dream he cried out, Where are you? The sweet voice answered, In the garden. He slept till dawn. When he awoke on the ground, he could still hear her voice echo, In the garden. A servant handed Mr. Craven a bundle of letters and went away. The one on top from Yorkshire caught his attention. He read it at once and then again. It said, Mr. Dear sir, I once spoke to you about Miss Mary. Now I must speak again. Please, sir, you must come home. I think you would be glad to come. If I might be so bold, I think your wife would ask you to come if she was here. Your obedient servant, Susan Sowerby. He thought about the letter and about his dream. He decided to return to England at once. On the train back to Yorkshire, he worried that Colin was seriously ill, maybe dying, but he decided not to give in to his dark thoughts anymore. For the first time in years, he looked forward to coming home. His heart felt warm. When he finally reached the manor, he called for Mrs. Medlock and asked how his son was. To tell the truth, Mrs. Medlock said, Mr. Colin might be better or he might be changing for the worse. We can't make him out. You know how he hated to see people and would never go outdoors? Well, he's taken a great fancy to Miss Mary and Deacon Sowerby. Now they push him in his chair and go outside by themselves every day. None of us is allowed in near them. I have tried to protect him, but he's there now, sir, in the garden. Her words rang in his ears. They were the same sweet words of his dream. He left Mrs. Medlock to go find his son. He followed the same route Mary had taken on first day at the manor. He knew where he must go, but he walked slowly. It had been so many years since he locked the door to his wife's garden. He wasn't sure if he could find the key. When he reached the ivy-covered wall, he stopped and looked around. He heard a scuffling sound as if someone was running in the autumn leaves. He seemed to hear voices and the happy laughter of children. Was he dreaming? Suddenly, the door of the locked garden flew open. A boy brushed through it, running at full speed. The boy didn't see the man and nearly crashed into him. Mr. Craven gasped the boy to keep him from falling. Who was he? Mr. Craven saw that he was tall and handsome. His cheeks glowed and his thick curly hair fell over his forehead. The boy's eyes shone with laughter when he pushed his hair back. Mr. Craven gasped when he saw the grey eyes, rimmed with black lashes and full of boyish fun. Colin had not planned to meet his father this way, but this was better. He had been running a race and had dashed through the door ahead of Mary. Now he was standing with his father's hand on his shoulders. I'm Colin, he said. You can't believe it. I can hardly believe it myself. Mr. Craven could only repeat, in the garden. Colin exclaimed, Yes, father, the garden did it, and Mary and Deacon and the wild creatures, and the magic. We kept it all secret until you came. I'm well now, and I'm going to be an athlete and a scientific discoverer. Colin spoke so naturally that Mr. Craven trembled with joy. He looked into his son's handsome, healthy face. He was speechless. Finally, Mr. Craven said, Take me into the garden, my boy. Tell me all about it. The garden was brilliant with autumn colors, gold and purple, violet and flaming red. Late lilies of white and red waved in the breeze. Autumn roses climbed upward and hung like curtains from the yellowing trees. Mr. Craven remembered when they were planted. I thought it would be dead, he gasped. Mary thought that when she found the garden, Colin said, but it came alive. The children led Mr. Craven to the grassy spot under their tree. They introduced Deacon, and everyone sat down. Colin and Mary began to tell their story. It was the strangest tale Mr. Craven had ever heard. Sometimes he laughed so hard that tears came to his eyes, and sometimes his cheeks were wet just like old Ben's when he saw Colin stand up. Ben had been listening nearby. He excused himself so that he could be back at the house when the servants first set eyes on Mr. Craven and Colin. When Ben entered the kitchen, Mrs. Medlock asked if he had seen Mr. Craven or the boy. "Eh?" Ben said. "I have seen them both." "Together?" Mrs. Medlock asked anxiously. "What did they say to each other?" "I couldn't tell," Ben replied with a sly grin, "but there's things going on outside that you house people don't know." He went over to the kitchen window. "Well, look at that," he said. "Look what's coming across the lawn." Mrs. Medlock looked out the window. She threw up her hands and screamed in surprise. The cook, Martha, and the other servants ran over and stared out the window in amazement. Across the grass came the master of Misselthwaite, smiling and laughing like no one had ever seen before, and at his side walked a tall, smiling lad, as straight and steady as any boy in Yorkshire. The servant gasped. It was Mr. Colin. At the end of it all, the secret garden bloomed once more beneath the Yorkshire sky. It worked its quiet miracle on those who tended it. What had been locked away in grief and silence opened again to light and life. Mary found kindness where once there had been bitterness. Colin found strength where he had only known fear. And in the careful turning of soil and the patient waiting for things to grow, they all discovered that healing, like a garden, begins with belief, care, and time. The garden was no longer a secret, but its magic remained, living on in the hearts of those who had learned how to grow. Thank you for spending your time here with this story. I hope it helped you relax and learn English at the same time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and continue your English learning journey with more classic audiobooks. See you in the next video.